everybody, and welcome back to PiTV. Today, I'm doing an interview with the amazing Kimi Zarate-Smith. Hi, Kimi.
Hi.
Today, we're going to be talking about her article in the upcoming edition of Connection for Pi, and I'm super excited to ask you about your article. So, before we begin, why don't you just tell me about your article, what you're writing about, just so that we all know what it's about.
I'm writing an article about Asian representation in the British music industry. And this basically just came about because I heard about the issue that Rina Sawayama had with the Brit Awards, and that she wasn't eligible to be a nominee, even though she has lived in Britain her entire life. And I just imagined, this is an experience because this is like an Asian experience, especially for like second generation immigrants living in the UK. And I'm a second generation immigrant living in the UK as well, who's also Asian, who's also into music. And so I felt I resonated with her, and I just wanted to write about that kind of experience.
So I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, but what was the inspiration for this article? I'm sure a part of it was the disqualification at the music industry. Where were you getting your news? How did that really affect you? Can you maybe tell us a bit more about the origin story, the backstory behind this article?
My article is very much so rooted in my own experience growing up as a kid who went to a school where there were like 3 Asians in like the entire school. And I've always been very creative and I loved music, but for some reason, or for a lot of reasons that I got into in the article, I felt that pop music and rock music and indie music and all these genres were not for people of color, and they weren't for Asians in particular. I think in the British music industry as well, we don't have enough representation, and that's the reason why a lot of Asian kids, a lot of people of color just don't feel like they have a place. They don't feel that they can take up space in this area of the industry. So I really just wanted to write about that kind of experience that I had. And it kind of came from a place of regret as well, because I kind of wish that I was more creative with my like musical talent, my very limited musical talent. And I wish that I didn't fall into the stereotypes that were placed in front of me as a child, just as a safeguarding mechanism. I think a lot of Asian kids feel that they have to fulfill the stereotypes that are put in front of them in order not to feel like they're trying to interrupt the society or the culture that they're trying to assimilate into. So that was basically the origins of the article. But now I think social media and just this huge like proliferation of Asian musicians. There's 88 Rising in the US, there's people like Joji, and in the UK there's Biba Doobie, and there's No Room, and there's Rina Sawayama. There's so many, and it's inspiring. It's amazing because they're all around my age. They're all like 18 to 25, and they're doing incredible things, and it paves the way for younger people. And so I wanted to write about that. These are some incredible artists that are doing more than making music. They are also being like the spotlighting for Asians in the future, so they can have a place in this industry.
So you've touched on a couple of very interesting points here. We're going to start with your story about music. If you're comfortable, do you mind sharing maybe about you and your story about music growing up in the UK as a second generation Asian? How was what was the sort of role that you were supposed to play that you were talking about, and of course your journey with music as well?
So my mum is Filipino, and in Filipino culture and in a lot of East and Southeast Asian culture, music is something that is seen as this. It's a certificate. It's a way to have something on paper that says that you're talented beyond academics. It's like a just this entirely like hyperbolic extracurricular activity. And I had done piano for about 15 years. It was awful. I really wanted to do things like guitar, and I wanted to play the drums, and I wanted to play piano like Bruno Mars played piano, but the only thing that was available to me as a kid was just music lessons. So I had to sacrifice my Saturday afternoons when I should have been like playing with my friends, like at a piano, crying because I missed the note in like Mozart's Concerto No. 2 or whatever. And so music for me when I was growing up was a disciplinary thing. And I think a lot of my Asian friends, when I came to UCL, I finally made Asian friends because I didn't have any at school, and they said the same thing. It's something that becomes numeric almost with the grading system, and the creativity becomes just sucked out of it. So only recently, in the past few years, have I taken music in a more creative, in a more creative way, and I'm trying to make music that is more about me rather than just reading notes off a book. But it was also something that I used to make sure that when I was at school, I didn't have that there was something about me that didn't mean that I could be like picked on or bullied for being Asian. It was like, oh, this girl's Asian and she's really good at music, and unfortunately there was an association that because she's good at music because she's Asian. But at least I had that, and at least it didn't necessarily put me on a pedestal, but it was a positive affirmation that I could relate to my like racial identity and my culture and my heritage. It was something that I was proud of. I was raised this way, and I was raised to be good at music, and so you can't just chat about being Asian as like it's a bad thing. So that's basically kind of how I experienced music growing up, but it's definitely changed with more Asian musicians coming into the spotlight.
That's a perfect segue into the next question I was going to ask you, which is you mentioned about the growth of new Asian artists in the UK music scene, in the US music scene. I was wondering if you could sort of describe more about that, and why do you think that's the case? Why do you think that it's been in the past few years with people who are roughly the same age as us, who are suddenly emerging and becoming Asian musicians? And do you really wish that would have happened back when you were a kid growing up, to have some role model or some example to look to?
I think the reason why it's happening right now in the UK is because of America. So in the States, the music industry is far more diverse. It is, I wouldn't say it's more welcoming because there are still issues with diversity and inclusion, but there is more room for any musician of color to try and make their name. And you can go back to collaborations. I think for me, the people in the States that like really showed me that like music, like Asian people could make pop music or rap music, it was Kanye West and and Teriyaki Boys. It was Bruno Mars, who I found out was half Filipino or like majority Filipino. It was her. It was like Aldia from Black Eyed Peas. Like these people were Asian, and my mind was blown when I was younger. But it kind of seemed like it was just something that happened in the US. And then with social media, I suppose the gap in the Atlantic becomes smaller, and soon British culture and American culture began to blend. And I think that has been so positive in the UK music industry, because now we're seeing more recognition for Asian musicians, and there's less of this bias that like Asians just do like piano or violin, and they do it and they just get like grades and all this ABRSM kind of stuff. And I think that that's been something that's really positive at the moment. It's also the fact that our idea of pop music right now has completely changed, and it's definitely been catalyzed by things like TikTok and Instagram, because you don't need a record label anymore to make it big. You need a SoundCloud account, or you need a TikTok, or you need an Instagram. There's not that middleman anymore where maybe a musician of color would go to a record agency, a record label, and say, hey, I want to make this kind of music, and they previously might have faced some discrimination because of their race, because like the commercialization of music and stuff like that just means that, you know, you're Asian, you're not marketable, you don't fit the category, people aren't going to want to listen to you. But with something like social media, you get to choose your audience and you do your own marketing, and you can figure out like whatever you want to do. And if you're good at it, then you'll make it. It doesn't matter what race you are. So people like PiTV, she's from London as well. She's Filipino, and she just made music in her bedroom. And then she gets signed by a label because it went viral on TikTok. And now the 1975's label Dirty Hit, it's an indie record label, have people like No Rome, Rina Sawayama, and Biba Doobie, who are three prominent names now in the music industry. And they've been given a platform, but that could only happen because of social media.
So, I mean, we sort of mentioned that growth and representation in minorities and Asians in music. But of course, your article is talking about the recent disqualification in the music awards. Where does that fit into this overall trend? Because it looks like things are, you know, looking upward. It looks like, you know, we're progressing. We're having more diversity in the music industry, and then this happens. Where does this fit in? What's happening?
That the reason why it's easier to find representation in the music industry right now is because the method of making music has been reduced to like making it in your bedroom, and it's on a much smaller level, which means that the larger names and the industry itself, the institution, hasn't caught up yet. So these larger governing bodies, so the governing bodies for like the Brit Awards, haven't seen that like what it means to be British and to make music has completely changed. And it's something that we saw with the Oscars, for example, with Parasite. It was that idea that I was like, this has been traditionally very Western, and now someone from the East has won an award, and it's like completely disruptive because what we know of film or what we know of music has been changed. Our expectations of it has been completely decentered from like a canonical Western view. And so it's so upsetting that that the Brit Awards would have such a physical border. It's like it goes all the way into like immigration policy. That's what's stopping someone from being recognized for their music. It's just, I feel sometimes that these structures are in place to kind of control the music industry here and to ensure that it seems like it's fundamentally British, which like I don't think they see what Britain is now. It's completely multicultural, and like the fact that you need a British passport to get a Brit Award, even if you've been living here for like your entire life, you've gone to uni here, you've gone to school here, it's just completely ridiculous.
But now I want to move towards asking about, you know, what do you want readers to get away from this? You know, when they finish reading your article, what do you want a reader to say? What do you want them to think about? And is it different? I mean, what do you want us to say to aspiring Asian musicians from this article? What are you trying to get at with this article? What's the one main takeaway?
I want aspiring Asian artists to read this article and know that the physical boundaries, the political boundaries, what it means to be British and what it means to be like an Asian pop artist has completely changed. So just go out and make music, and like all these like record labels that are telling you not to do that, and all these like very traditional ways of getting there and making it, just put them to one side and just make your music and just do the social media thing and you'll be fine. I think we have, or a lot of Asians have, internalized our upbringing and internalize the separation between the British culture and the Asian culture. And sometimes you feel that there's this kind of suspension between two different cultures that you don't feel like you're fully integrated into one or the other. But you don't need to be integrated into one or other, because now there's a British Asian sound that's being made in between. And we should basically just be listening to more Asian artists because they're great. And if you're an Asian musician, I'm sure you're fantastic. Make your music and just do it.
I want to ask about the future of the music industry here in the UK. Do you think we're on the right track? What do you, I mean, do you have any suggestions, proposals? I'm not sure if you discussed that in your article, but what do you think is going to be the future of the music industry? Do you think we're going to be seeing more diversity, or do you think there's going to be a harder clamp down by the institutions that you've mentioned earlier?
I think I'm quite optimistic. It's looking up. With this recent U-turn that the Brit Awards have done, as a result of Rina Sawayama, I think now there is way more space for Asian musicians. And it's not going to be easy. I think diversity and inclusion have become these token words that a lot of industries kind of throw around. And to see it materialize is often a lot harder than to say, we have diversity. But I think, yes, I think it's looking up. And I think that is as a result of social media. I don't think it is as durable as it used to be. I think our idea of it is changing completely. The way that we consume music and the way that we consume media is just this mess of different ways. So it's going to be interesting to see how a music industry, or how an industry itself that is quite fragile and is ever changing, is going to be able to keep up with minority artists and POC artists who are disrupting the industry itself.
Awesome, Kimi. Well, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching today's video. Connection comes out on April 20th, and you should get yourself a copy so you can read Kimi's amazing article. I'm very excited to read it myself, so I hope everybody will get the chance to read it. Thank you for participating in this interview, Kimi, and I wish you good luck with the article.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.